Hey, it's Chris from Jam Academy Music School in Woodinville, Washington. Today I'm going to show you how to change the strings on your acoustic guitar. So if it's been a long time since you've changed your strings, 3 to 6 months, it's probably time to change and replace them. You'll be happy once you did. This guitar plays much easier and it sounds much better with fresh strings. So if it's been 6 months or more, or if you can physically see or feel a layer of crud, especially on the high two strings, if it starts to make that noise, then you know it's got some stuff built up on there. A lot of my students, they struggle with changing the strings on their guitar, and for that reason they put it off far too long. But it's really not that much of a struggle. So I'm just going to show you kind of a step-by-step method on how you can change the strings by yourself. That way you won't have to pay a company, a music store, or whatever to change the strings for you. It's really not very hard, and it's a skill that you should have as a guitar player. So I'm going to change camera angles here, and we're going to go ahead and get going on this guitar right here. So I'm going to show you some tools of the trade, which I have laid out here in just a bit. Alright, so hang in there. I'll be right back. Well, before we actually proceed to changing the strings on the guitar, I'm going to show you some of the tools of the trade. So this is called a peg winder or a string winder. We use it to kind of speed the process of turning the knobs. Doing this over and over again can be rather annoying. So I like to use a peg winder. It's great for loosening the strings, and it's great for putting them back on. Also, you'll want a pair of wire cutters to snip the strings and to trim the ends when we're done. Obviously you'll need a set of strings. I'm going to put a set of elixir strings on this guitar, and I'm putting a pretty light gauge on to make it so that it's pretty easy to play. The elixir strings are pretty cool. They last a long time. They have a Gore-Tex coating on them. There's other treated strings like this that withstand rust and corrosion and extend the life of the strings. Some folks don't like the tone quite as much, so I will say that other strings can sound better like straight out of the box, but these will sound better 2 weeks later than the other ones will, and they'll sound better for months, a couple months, definitely longer than the others. So I really like the elixirs if you're not going to be changing your strings very often. If you're changing your strings regularly, then you may not need to use the elixirs. I'm also going to use a snark tuner, and the snark tuner will basically listen to the vibrations of the guitar and let you know what pitch it hears and if it's sharp or flat. So we're going to use that. That's a great tool. And finally, I like to use a couple of polish cloths or towels or something to rest the guitar on. That way I can be somewhat hands-free and I don't have to worry about scratching my nice guitar. Alright, so moving on to the first step, we're going to go ahead and just remove the strings. I'm going to go ahead and remove all 6 strings. Some people like to only remove a few at a time, and either way works. I'm going to go ahead and just start by loosening these guys, and I'm going to cut them in half and just remove them. So loosen the strings a little bit here, use my tool. There you go. Now I have some nice loose strings, and at this point I don't use them for anything else, so can't think of a way to salvage them. They're mostly iron, nickel, and steel, so they're probably recyclable. I don't know for sure. So when I put the strings on, I make it so that these guys are easy to pull back out. Sometimes from the factory those things really get smashed in there and they get hard to pull, or depending on who changed the strings last time, they could really jam them in there. So when I string it gently. I put these in gently so that they're easy to get back out. Alright, so on this end, sometimes it's a little bit difficult to get the ends off. It just depends on how it was strung before. And the way we're going to string it today is going to make it just a little bit trickier to get the ends off. But we'll get to that step in a moment. Alright, so discard those guys. And a lot of times I'll take all 6 off. I mentioned I was going to take all 6 off, and I think I will because I'm going to clean the fretboard a little bit too. So I've heard people say, "You're not supposed to take all of the strings off at one time, Chris, because that's bad for the neck." And it's going to warp the neck if you take all the strings off. Well, I disagree. I believe that the guitar was built without strings on it, and it's made to withstand the tension, and from time to time the strings have to come off and things need to be cleaned, and there's not a way to do it without taking all the strings off. So I think if you left the strings off for a prolonged period, maybe there would be repercussions, but I think typically in just a standard, I'm going to change the strings and clean my guitar, you shouldn't have any problems taking all the strings off. So I'm going to try to zoom the camera in a little bit to show you what I'm talking about. There's kind of some dirt and junk on here. Okay, so all my strings are off. To clean this, I'm going to use a little bit of lemon oil. This is almost gone. You can use Guitar Honey. There's lots of different brands of lemon oil. You probably you might very well have something already in your garage that will work just the same. But lemon oil is ideal. I wouldn't recommend any other oils without checking first. But all right, so everything that was dry and dirty on this guitar is going to be soaked with oil and rubbed clean. Alright, so I'm going to rub this on here, let it sit for a little while. I'll come back with a paper towel and dry it all off. Go ahead and oil this part too, since it looks pretty dry. And basically, if your guitar, if it has these dark colors, the rosewood colors or mahogany or ebony, all of those will absorb some oil if needed. If not, it'll just sit on top of the wood and it won't go anywhere. So what we do is we let it sit, we let it drink up as much oil as we can, and at that point we wipe it off. We'll let it sit for a few minutes and absorb, and we'll come back and we'll kind of do the rub and clean everything and polish her up. Sometimes I'll clean the frets, but today they don't look too terribly bad, so I'm going to leave them like they are. I would clean the frets with strips of masking tape and then steel wool. And the masking tape is there to protect the grain of the wood. So I put masking tape on either side of the fret wire, something like this, and then steel wool that piece there. But that's for another episode. As it is now, this seems to be absorbing much of the oil on this end, so I might bring a little from this end back down here, since it seems thirsty. Make sure it gets enough. All right. Pause the video. Alright, so quickly wiping these guys down, kind of give them a good scrub. You can see there a good bit of grime came off the fretboard. So it's nice to get that off there. Makes your guitar happy. Thanks you for caring for it. Alright, at this point we can start putting the strings on. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the low E string, one of my bridge pins, and I'm going to feed the ball end of the string into the hole for the low E, the 6th string, the closest hole to me, and gently just tap that guy in there like that, and then just pull the string up so it sits in there. What should be happening, as you can see, some of these are a little bit bent. The ball actually sits right about here, next to the top, and kind of pushes the pin in crooked. So the ball isn't underneath. If the ball's underneath, it'll pull the pin out with it. So that's why I put it in too far and put the grooved edge towards the front. Tap it in there, and just kind of hold it in place barely, and then pull all that tight. And that way, right now the ball is over here on the bridge pin, and so when you pull it to tune it up, it shouldn't pull the pin out. Alright, so same process again. Make sure you've got the strings in the right order, especially before you start to ravel them up, tighten them up, wind them up. Okay, so once again, grooved in towards the headstock. Just ball end first. Tap tap. Tug tug. On to string number, well, it's the third one we're doing, but it's string number 4. Fourth string, the D string. And repeat. Third string, G string, and repeat. Make sure that goes in there good, correctly. Second string, repeat, repeat. Okay, so yes, this is a little tedious, but it can go pretty fast once you've had some practice. I used to break a lot of strings, electric guitar strings, on stage. And I got to be where I could change the string that broke mid-song, and I could finish out the song with a new string most of the time, depending on how far into the song we were, of course. But yeah, I kept a pack of strings in my back pocket so that I could change them in a flash. I almost forgot to do this. This is the best time to polish down here and down here, the parts that are covered by the strings and are hard to get to. So, reach down here with this microfiber cloth and just give it a nice little dusting. There we go. Turn it back into a pillow. There we go. Alright, so now we're ready. Alright, I'm going to take this opportunity to zoom in on the headstock of the guitar. So we're going to zoom in tight and close here. Okay, now you should be able to see pretty clearly what I'm doing. Alright, so pretty simple process. Find the hole, feed the string straight through, and then I feed it all the way in until I can't go anymore. At which point I give it some slack. So we're going to pull about that much for the low E string so that it has room to wrap around the post a good 2, maybe 3 times. Alright, so at this point, there's 2 ways you can do this. One is just to start winding and wind until it's up to pitch. I like to take an extra step to keep the tuning stable. So I'll bring this piece behind, underneath, over and back. I'll repeat that for the next string so you can see clearly. At which point, now we can just hold tension towards the bottom with the wraps to wrap downwards so it sit nice and tight in the groove. Sorry if I moved you off camera there. We shall see in a moment. Alright, at this point, we can cut off this extra here and discard. No sense in tuning it all the way up yet. The strings are going to stretch quite a bit. Just make sure that you don't over tighten and break your brand new strings. It happens a lot. I hear stories from students all the time. Oh, I put the strings on and it snapped. So make sure not to over tighten when you're tuning up. And for that reason, for some folks, it might be better only to replace 3 of the strings at a time, so you can use the other ones as reference, or even change 1 at a time. That's actually a great idea for the first timers. So I'm doing this just to be quick about it. All right, so we'll do this one more time here. So I go about a quarter way around. Notice I'm holding pressure here with my thumb, so that this stays tight here. A little more than a quarter way around, and then this part of the string comes back around and underneath. So back around, underneath, and I put that pressure back on, crock it, and bring it back around again. So that's kind of an over-the-top tuning method, but as you get to playing guitar more and more and you want your tuning to be more stable, it becomes more important. So it's worth the extra couple seconds now to save me from messing with tuning over and over again. Alright, so clip that nice and short. Be really careful. Those are very, very sharp little segments of string now. Alright, so I'm going to zip through the rest of this here, and so don't forget a little bit of slack on the string. That we've got to be about this distance each time, and that'll give you a good 2 or 3 wraps. As the strings get smaller in diameter, you'll get more and more wraps for that same distance. Alright, so backwards, under, over and back again. Keeping pressure here the whole time. That way I don't get loops on this end. Always have to sing a song while you're changing the strings on your guitar. Alright, so the goal is to get nice, neat, pretty wraps right there like that. You don't want the string stacking on top of itself. That'll cause tuning problems also. Alright, so hopefully this is helping you guys out. If not, then you might have to, I don't know, watch the video again. It's cool that we can do that in this day and age. We can rewind and pause television. Alright, so we're halfway done now. And the home stretch. So I'm just going to cook right along with this stuff. And feel free to put your questions and comments in the space below where it's allowed. If you have questions, put those guys in there too. If you missed something that I did, maybe I can find a way to do a close-up or edit the video to fix it. So you'd be helping me out by commenting and sharing and plus one-ing and liking and everything else. It's all appreciated. Share the video with your friends. Here, you can learn how to string your guitar too. Or here, you can learn how to string my guitar. Alright, so last one here. Then all we have to do is tune and stretch and tune and stretch and play. So I can't wait to get to the playing part. That's my favorite. Alright, so we are wrapping up here with the last one. This part here can be a little tricky to learn how to finagle the string and keeping the pressure on while not getting loops. And it just takes a little bit of practice. So take your time on the first few strings or the first even few stringings as you're learning how to do it. And before too long, it becomes something you can do relatively quickly, which makes changing the strings on your guitar much more rewarding, especially once it's finished and it sounds fantastic. You'll be so happy. So will your guitar teacher. Alright, so now we got that much done. I'm going to zoom out a little bit now, and we will do the tuning portion with the snark tuner here. Make sure there's no glare on that guy. There, how's he looking? Pretty good, pretty good. Alright, so it thinks that's a C. We know that should be an E. So the C is definitely, this pitch is too low. So we're going to bring it up to the E. And I'm going to leave that there just to show you how much these strings will stretch. So I'm going to go ahead and tune the next string to A. Combination of things are happening right now. As I'm tightening these strings, the neck is actually bending a little bit and it's loosening the other strings. So I'm definitely going to have to tune it twice just for that reason. This is the G string here. E, F, F sharp, or F and a half, depending on who you talk to. F and a half, G. Alright, this one should be B, A sharp, B. The last one should be a high E, far from it. C sharp, D, D sharp, D and a half. E is too low, E is good. Okay, now we'll go back to the low E and we'll see how much it's dropped. D sharp. That's without helping it to stretch at all. If I help it stretch, and so now I'm by the sound hole and I'm pulling on the string, give it a firm tug. The string really dropped a lot. I'll continue tugging on the string until it stops stretching. So there's the E, tug the string again. You can break the string, so don't yank on it, just give it a good firm tug and wiggle it. Pretty soon it stops dropping as much. So we might be one more time and then we're good. Alright, so I'm going to do that with the rest of the strings, then I'll come back and check and see how they're all doing. Alright, so stretching the A string, G sharp, A little flat, A in tune. Sounds great. Hey, thanks again for hopping on today. Do take a minute to comment if you have any questions about what we did. I want to make sure you got the most out of the tutorial and that you really got some value from it. And I just want to make sure that you're able to do this, and I think you can. You just got to take your time and just try. Jump in there and do it. So good on you for trying and watching the whole video. I do appreciate, and I'm excited for the next video. Thanks again. Rock and roll.